I'm reading the following on behalf of Dr. Tom Bratter, who's the head of school at John Dewey Academy, where Jack completed high school. These are Tom's words. I wanted to be here today, not so much for Jack, because he can no longer hear my words. It is too late for Jack. But it's not too late for his sister Rosemary. I feel guilty that I have betrayed Rosemary by not attending this service, and I appreciate that Lisa has offered to read my comments to you. I have had 2 heart attacks in the past 6 weeks, and thus I am afraid to challenge my already challenged heart. Like it or not, I need to make drastic changes, but I deeply regret that I could not join you in person. My comments today are directed primarily to Rosemary. I hope she can learn from Jack's mistakes, from his struggles, from his too brief life experience, and from his successes as well. I knew Jack much better than he wanted me to know him. We had similar life experiences, but responded differently to these. My father died from his 3rd heart attack when I was 17, so I know how it feels to grow up without a father. I also inherited my father's bad heart, and like Jack, I have an implanted defibrillator. For Jack, his father's premature death produced profound pain which he could not seem to confront and resolve for many years. Jack tried to protect himself from pain by squashing down his feelings and by retreating from emotional connections with others. Most tragically of all, as a teenager, he did not invest in his future, perhaps because he feared he would share his father's destiny of premature death. During those years, Jack was his own worst enemy. Although in many ways I would have been a good choice as a surrogate father, Jack used his considerable innate intellectual resources to prevent the evolution of such a relationship. I didn't take it personally, as I recognized Jack's fear of being betrayed by my own premature death. Only after he left John Dewey did Jack begin to reach out to me. Several months ago, he asked if I would endorse his application to become a member of the Army Reserve Corps. I felt conflicted because I consider it my mandate to keep my kids out of harm's way. I wanted to urge the military to reject him, but I knew if I heeded my conscience, Jack would resent my interference. I wrote a sincerely persuasive recommendation, but I doubted the application would succeed because of his health problems. Jack's untimely death is doubly tragic because he turned his life around as a young adult. Although he didn't take full advantage of the Dewey experience, he matured enough to start to use his intellectual and personal assets creatively and constructively when he went to RPI. To his credit, Jack justified the generous scholarship RPI had given him by excelling academically. Recently, he'd been planning for his professional future. Had Jack lived, I believe his growth would have continued. On a personal note, I hoped Jack might realize that he could trust in our relationship and in my care for him. I passionately believe that had he lived, he would have improved the quality of life for others in his work as an engineer. Rosemary, like your brother and me, and for that matter everyone here, you have a choice in how you live your life. In some ways, Jack struggled, but you can learn from his struggle. Obviously, you have also been endowed with superior intellect, which I contend you are obligated to use for the benefit of others. Jack had trouble trusting others and letting people in during his time at Dewey. It was a waste, and it was a shame, although his years at RPI were, I believe, much richer. Perhaps we failed him. I urge you to gain the courage to risk being hurt, being betrayed, and being rejected. You will experience pain, but you will also experience love and connection if you make yourself vulnerable to others. This is what life is all about. My intent in writing this is to help Rosemary and Tree face the future. After such a tragic loss, after so many tragic losses that this family has suffered, it would be easy to wallow in the pain. I hope all of us who care for Tree and Rosie will help them to face forward. Rosemary, remember I'm as close as the nearest cell phone. Be kind to yourself and others. Jack would want that for you. Gain the courage to love, knowing that love can bring with it pain at times. And remember, Rosemary, self-respect is the most important goal. Go for it. I am confident in your abilities. It's scary, but based on 71 years of living, I state with much passion and conviction that it is worth it. That's the end of Tom's words, but if I might, I would just like to share a few of my own memories about Jack. He came to Dewey in the spring of 2004. He was angry, he wasn't succeeding at academics or in his family relationships, and he certainly wasn't happy to be at Dewey. Even then, though, his was a big and powerful presence, but he didn't know how to harness his strength back then. He had a pretty rocky time of it, and in fact ended up finishing his high school credits away from the campus. Jack always did things the Jack way, and sometimes the Jack way was harder than it needed to be. But somehow during those years he began to take control of his life. He started taking care of business, and he learned to take responsibility for himself. He graduated from high school and began a very successful career at RPI. Instead of depending on others to make things happen for him, he did it himself. He became independent, and somehow this helped him allow himself to care more deeply for others. During his junior year at RPI, he spent a semester in Australia. He loved it so much that he independently financed a second semester there on his own. Tree and Rosie were able to visit him there. I'm so glad they have those memories now. I spoke to Jack by chance about 6 months ago. He happily filled me in on his post-graduation plans and on his desire to serve in the military. He gave me an update on his mother and sister, and he seemed to me to have found his place in his life and also within his family. I like to think that he grew into himself, that he was more comfortable in his own skin, that he had figured out how to integrate his brain and his heart. If the measure of a life well lived is that of someone who struggled and who overcame and who invested, then Jack Gibson's life was short, but it was also well lived.